Give him a round of applause, please. How are you feeling? I'm good. I'm good. How are you? I think you're just over there. Jean-Philippe, why don't you? I love your role. I love your job. Why don't you introduce yourself? So who are you? And what do you do?
Well, thank you, John, for giving me the chance to share a bit of what we do. I'm the CEO of The Future is Neutral. I'm just going to call the company Neutral. It's going to be easier and shorter for everyone. And that company is operating in the automotive space, so cars. And what we do is we provide solutions, circular economy solutions, for the entire automotive industry, for the entire cycle of a vehicle, from the production down to the end-of-life solutions. And we're, I think, the only dedicated company in Europe to circular economy solutions in automotive, serving car manufacturers, insurers, individuals, tier one suppliers, basically the entire industry. Just a few numbers. We've been created in October 2022. The company is 500 people. The total sales is roughly 1 billion euros. It's already profitable because the activities have been launched way before 2022. And we have on the shelf several millions of used parts for automotive players. We have recycled several millions of tons of products. We have 15 clients and 10 partners. So in a nutshell, this is who we are and what we do.
Well, I'm just going to keep, oh, brilliant. The clock's working again now. It wasn't working before. Well, congratulations, first of all, being already profitable. I mean, I think that deserves a round of applause. Whatever. You know. And the reason why I say that is that I speak to clients a lot. We're in 143 countries, and when you speak about circularity, you know, quite often there's you know, maybe a roll of the eyes, and this is something may happen in 50 years or so, but you've got a company that's profitable today. What's your vision? What's the mission for the future? Where do you want to get to?
So we think that there is a path where circularity in the automotive space can be competitive, where mass adoption is possible. And in order to reach mass adoption, we need to play with the rules of the games in the industry. And because we are part of the recycling world in automotive, we believe that actually recycling more parts and putting more materials on the market is key. So in other words, we believe massification of our activities, scaling up of our activities, reaching more and more customers is absolutely key, so that the competitiveness of the products and services that we put on the market reaches a threshold which is becoming acceptable for our partners and for our customers.
Sorry, if I may, Jean-Philippe, I mean, this is a really, when we talk before, it's a really interesting point. Maybe if you could expand on this, because normally with the conversations I have, we're talking about reducing right? Consumption, right? We all should use less, we should look at buy less, we should travel less, but you seem to be suggesting something different.
Correct.
Right, so maybe you'd like to expand on that.
I'll give you an example.
Yeah.
You know, so we have a company called the Remakers, which does remanufacturing of engines, gearboxes, turbos, injection systems. And that company remanufactured last year roughly 350,000 parts, okay? Every part that is coming out of that manufacturing site is 30% cheaper than a virgin part, and has saved between 80 and 90% of electricity and water compared to the original part. So in other words, for every additional part that we put on the market, it's a good news for the consumer, but it's also a good news for the planet and the environment, because it represents savings compared to new ones. And really that's the idea. Our goal at The Future is Neutral is to decrease the amount of virgin resources that the OEMs, the car manufacturers, need to use in order to produce new vehicles. And we are building a network of companies and partnerships so that this happens in a competitive manner, and therefore the mass adoption becomes a key lever to reduce the prices and to generalize our solutions. So in other words, the better for the environment and the better for the consumers.
Honestly, when you mention this, I think this is a brilliant concept, especially when we think about the world in which we're living now. You know, I'm going to say the T words, tariffs. You know, when we think about the impact on tariffs and the deglobalization, and if you bring in supply chains closer to home, but the minerals, the raw materials that you need are outside. If you look to use that, I think it's absolutely brilliant. But surely this is going to be a massive disruptor for business models. So maybe, you know, what are your thoughts around that disruption element?
Look, I was listening to the previous chat, you know, on stage, and I fully understand, and I agree to a certain extent that, you know, disruption in the business models are required. In our case, it's slightly different in the sense that the business models that we operate are quite, I would say, natural and traditional. Let me give you an example. You know, we are designing, manufacturing, and selling parts. Those parts need to be competitive. They need to be excellent parts. They need to be of very high levels of quality. We also provide services. Those services need to be affordable. They need to be made aware that we have those kinds of solutions, right? And so the business models, in other words, the way that the company is generating profits so that we can reinvest those profits into the circularity of our operations is quite traditional, so to speak. Okay. The creativity lies in the way that the company is operating on those very traditional business models. And I think that our customers and our clients in the B2B space have potentially a greater challenge in incorporating our solutions in their linear model.
That's excellent. What's been key to your success today?
Look, it's I think the key success factor number one is that the company has been able or is working extremely hard to make sure that we speak different languages, and those are the languages of traditional enterprises and, you know, organizations and governance structures. So in other words, when we invest in our equipment in a factory, we have to convince the CFO that the investment has a rate of return that is bearable for the company that is investing. In the meantime, the Chief Sustainability Officer needs to understand how many tons of CO2 are saved or avoided thanks to our solutions. And in the meantime, the Chief Procurement Officer needs to understand the level of savings that are potentially down the road, and that is going to be, you know, the savings with neutral solutions compared to other solutions. So one of the key success factors is really to deeply understand the concerns of our customers, the concerns of our partners, and speak their language. It's our role to understand their language, not the other way around. Otherwise, there is a glass ceiling that will never break.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. I talk about the importance of being bilingual, trilingual, quadlingual, speaking the language of all these areas. So just one thing, I'm really looking forward to this, because I don't quite know what you're going to do. So at school, do you remember at school we would have show and tell? You know what I mean? So you bring in something and show and tell. And before you do, okay, so Jean-Philippe, he's got something here. Is it safe?
Yes, it's safe.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
Okay, because I wasn't sure if I need to move to this chair.
You're
okay.
safe.
So just in describing the strategic imperative of circularity, because it can get quite technical, you've brought something in you'd like to show us. So why don't you show us what you got?
Before I'm taking that stuff out of the pocket.
And you said it's safe. So
it's safe, okay. It's safe, it's safe.
Okay, all right, good.
Just before I'm taking it out, the point of this little example is the imperative of being focused as a company on very clear objectives.
Okay.
And the objectives that we are focused on are the sovereignty of Europe in accessing materials that we don't have in our ground, reducing the environmental impact of the activities that people need such as moving from point A to point B using mobility services and products, and also the competitiveness of our solutions. Okay, so sovereignty, environment, and competitiveness. And I've brought here, this is rhodium. So little show of hands, who knows what rhodium is and why it matters? One, two,
Oh, wow.
1, 2, 3 people. Perfect,
Wow.
perfect.
Wow.
So let me give you one or two hints. Rhodium is a precious metal that is used in every combustion engine vehicle that you find here in Europe. And that serves in reducing the emission of NOx in the atmosphere. So it's a precious metal that you find in the exhaust pipe of the vehicles, okay? Do we have rhodium in Europe? No. You find rhodium in Russia, in South Africa, in Zimbabwe, in Canada, but none a single gram of rhodium in Europe, okay? And I've brought here 1 gram of rhodium. Just bear in mind that that metal is worth 2 times the price of gold as we speak. So 1 kilogram of that represents 190,000 euros. Gold is 90,000 euros.
He has
I
his
just
security
checked before.
guard outside, so he will be safe going home.
This is fake rhodium.
You
but-
didn't tell me that before.
But basically, in the exhaust pipes, you find 1 gram of rhodium.
Yeah.
Okay, and that's necessary. So just imagine that to get that gram of rhodium, you would need to take from the ground 1 ton of minerals in Russia, in Zimbabwe, in Canada, in South Africa, but not in Europe, okay? And I'm talking here about the exhaust pipes that are needed here in Europe. So our view at Neutral is to say, well, if we could get the exhaust pipes that are in the old cars in the dismantling sites in Europe, crush the exhaust pipes and then refine the rhodium that's inside, we have a closed loop in Europe with a pure metal that can be reintegrated, not in mirror polishing or any other industries, but in the automotive industry. And by doing that, we save 1 ton of minerals excavated from the ground and then refined in, I don't know how the conditions were for the refinery of that metal, but we believe that that circularity is probably the beginning of the answer. And we do that for rhodium, we do that for palladium, for platinum, for plastics, for steel, for copper, for cobalt, for nickel, for lithium. And that's only a portion of what we're trying to do with the closed loop that you were just mentioning.
And that's amazing, because for me, it brings together a number of subjects we heard from before, bold, forward thinking, also, that long-term thinking. But how are you financing this? Because I mean, it sounds complex.
It is.
It sounds expensive. It doesn't sound very easy.
No, it's a bit complex, and we rely on a few things to succeed in that aspect. But of course, there is enough room to progress. Okay, but basically, the foundations of all that is, one, we have a shareholder family which is quite supportive. The Future is Neutral is a company of Renault Group and Suez, so an OEM and a waste management company that are combining not only the financing, but also the gray cells, the brains that are required to actually solve problems, circular solutions in the automotive world. So that's key. The second foundation of that company is that we are operating with horizontal partnerships. We don't believe necessarily in vertical integration in every step that we do, but we have a number of partners that we work with in order to coordinate each and every step of the transformation of that little metal I've got in the pocket, or metals, plastics, non-ferrous metals, and used parts. So really partnerships and the courage of our shareholders in putting us on the market and saying, okay guys, serve the market, become big, because being big is actually a good news for the industry and for the environment.
Absolutely, being big, being commercially viable means that you're generating revenues, generating funding, and you can put that back in. I know we're coming towards the end of our session now, Jean-Philippe, and maybe you've heard this a few times before. Obviously the framing is the context of immediacy bias, thinking about the here, the now, quick results, quick returns, quick responses, but some of these things are complex, so it needs vision, it needs courage, it needs funding, it needs capital. I've asked all the panelists, and I'll ask you the same, when you look at the audience now, what no regret advice would you give to people here and say, well look, these are one or two things that I'd advise you just to move forwards and go for it?
Okay, well, first of all, it's a humble contribution given the quite young age of the company, so there is still a lot to learn. But a few things that we have seen have worked quite well is, one, regarding the vision. It is key to have a vision, but it's also very important to put words on that vision and to write that vision down so that it can be shared with the employees, with the partners, with our shareholders, and that there is one very clear target. And so in order to do that, we have written down a 12 pages document that basically summarizes the vision of the future is neutral for the entire industry and how we want to operate in 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, and that's an aspirational way to advance and to be in the action, okay? Point number two, is we have decided to operate our company with the rules of the game of the industry. We do not want to revolutionize how the industry is operating, but we want to operate the change in our own company in order for us to be successful in that type of setup. And maybe the word of advice on that is, there is a possibility for businesses, for activities, for opportunities to have a room in the circular economy space without having to revolutionize the entire system. But it takes an incredible amount of lucidity, a lot of work, and definitely the engagement of the employees, but that's the beauty of the company. Every day the people who are working at Neutral, the partners and our customers are here, and they know that they are making an impact, a positive impact for every step that they are making. So maybe short evolutions rather than revolutions has been so far what has been the most efficient in our case.
That's absolutely fantastic, and look, what I would say is, in many ways, this whole dialogue, 5 incredible speakers, has been a dialogue of both and. How do we lean into immediacy bias whilst also creating that long-term vision, the future? How do we disrupt businesses, but also seek opportunities to work within the framework of what we have? How do we drive innovation, but also ensure that we secure the capital that we need? Now, this has been fantastic. I found it really interesting. We've had 5 fantastic speakers. This is at the end of our session now. Please join me in thanking Jean-Philippe and indeed all of the speakers. Thank you very much.
Thank you, John. Thank you.